My name is Jade Hamnett. I've been an employer for just under 10 years and I'm the current chair of the group. I've lived with a disability since I was 15 and I've been involved with campaigning on lots of different disability rights issues under many guises over the years. In terms of the actual group itself, it has evolved in slightly different ways. First of all, the independent living group was set up by Mark Bates Insurance to give added support for their customers. From there, it was felt a separate group for all PA employers was needed. The person that really saw this gap was David Ashley, who you'll see popping up in the chat, and he has been very involved in the direct payment community from different sides. He is absolutely invested and passionate about PA employers, and he was able to obtain some startup funding from Mark Bates, but ILG Community is independent and separately run from any other organisation. We have our own committee and we have our own terms of reference. And the steering group is made up of people with lived experience. We all of us either run our budgets for ourselves, run budgets for someone else, and then in addition to that, some of the committee also work in very closely related fields. So we've all got that experience of knowing what it's like. We also have steering group members with specialist knowledge or interests. So we have a separate rep that covers each part of the country, i.e. England, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales. And some of the steering group members are also carers for members of their own family. We also have members that use direct payments, health budgets, continuing healthcare budgets and more. We set the agenda for the group, so we are the ones that run it. I felt that a lot of other organisations, such as care homes, agencies, had a seat at the table in government. I'm not saying they were listened to straight away, just to be clear, but they were able to say, these are the kind of things that we need. And it felt like PA employers didn't have that. And we were struggling to say, you know, we need PPE. And I know a lot of employers felt really abandoned at this time. We also spoke at the House of Lords on behalf of employers, and the link to that will also be on the website. And instead I found the opposite. So my social worker provided quite a lot of roadblocks and I had no idea where to turn at that point. How many of you here today have done that? Accepted a care plan or review that doesn't actually meet your needs, whether through fear or lack of energy to fight that battle? When a social worker, who I'd had a review with 2 weeks previously that had gone perfectly well, sent me an email saying she was cutting half of my budget because she didn't see the evidence for it. She ended the email with, "I know you won't be happy about this, but I'm off on annual leave for 2 weeks now." I then spent those 2 weeks in bed thinking that my life had just fallen apart, because we, you know, if you have care, you have it for a reason and we all rely on it. She replied after 2 weeks with the literal email, "Oops, I hadn't read your whole file and I can now see all the evidence is there. Please ignore that last email."
I'm Anna. I'm somebody that has been drawing on social care for 10 years. And I'm also one of the conveners of a movement called Social Care Future. And I, like Jade was talking about, really experienced that fear and that powerlessness and that sense of, I don't want to know if I can even challenge this, because I should be grateful for what I've got, or they might cut my budget even more. At one point I did ask for more hours, and so I could go out and sort of meet up with friends, and I was told, "We can refer you to a befriending scheme." And I just thought, this isn't, you know, you're not listening to me. You know, if you had a conference discussing women's rights and it was an all-male panel and no women could attend, quite rightly, that would be absolutely not okay. But somehow it was acceptable for people to be talking about our life and the things we needed without us even being in the room, let alone speaking. Just a movement about people being able to live good, ordinary lives. Everybody is welcomed and valued. It's not about your job title or, you know, we want everyone to be a part of Social Care Future. And we really wanted to be ambitious, because at that point, the sector was just talking about survival, you know, trying to get a little bit more money so it could survive. And we thought, no, that's not good enough. And we have seen this vision now being used a lot by other organisations. And it shifts that conversation from service land and commissioning and budgets and to actually people's lives. And it makes people see us as human beings, which they should do anyway, but unfortunately can get lost. So we started trying to talk differently about social care. We actually did some research into what they call reframing, but really it's just about trying to change the language that people are using So instead of things being in a crisis and people being kept alive, we started talking about people having a life. Instead of talking about vulnerable people with needs, we talk about everybody having things to offer in society. And instead of talking about it costing too much, we talk about that actually we need to spend as an investment, because social care is an important part of our society. And then we had this thing called the Whose Care Is It Anyway inquiry, which I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about now, because I think that just demonstrates that actually we need a voice and what we can do. That document on the left, the picture is of the inquiry report. It's fairly short. There is an easy read version on the website. I'll send around the slides and it's got the link, and a short video version. We called it Whose Social Care Is It Anyway? To be a bit provocative, I guess. And we did it for a few reasons, but I think the most important reason we did this inquiry was to demonstrate almost that we could. So it was completely led by an inquiry group of people with lived experience, either themselves or a family member drawing on social care. We had people in that group with dementia, we had people with learning disabilities, physical disabilities, and we led it. And we did speak to experts and we asked people to contribute to it, but we had the power. And so often, you know, I get asked to maybe be the person with lived experience on a committee or come and give evidence to a commission. And instead, we said, no, actually, we can lead our own inquiry. And I think that sent a really powerful message out to the sector. And I think for us, you know, direct payments are really key to that, because if done well, I think they can enable people to stay in their own home or choose where they live. They can enable people to have choice over their lives. And if the person has some real power over how that direct payment is used, you know, there can be really amazing enablers in people's lives. But unfortunately, at the moment, there's a lot of reasons that make that quite difficult. Too often in the press, you can get those stories that say, disabled person uses budget to go to the football, yeah, or something like that, you know, and you just say, oh no. And it's about trying to change the narrative in the media that disabled people, older people deserve a life, and the normal things too. And too often I hear, you know, organisations say, we'd like someone with lived experience to come and tell us what it's like. And that's the first step. That's good. They're listening. But I think that misses a huge part of what lived experience offers, which is solutions. Because yes, we face a lot of challenges, but we are blimmin' creative usually and resilient and come up with some really good solutions as to how to keep going and how to solve those problems. You know, it's all lovely to sort of sit around and chat, and you know that's important, but actually, you know, I think this as a group, there are some clear issues facing employers, and it will be great to see the impact that you can have over the next few years.
People with complex care needs need the right assistance in hospital, and having assistance that isn't tailored to you can cause secondary issues, further complications. So as well as that, we've got case studies from people with lived experience. And that's not just the negative experiences. We also want to care about the good experiences, because there are some hospitals or departments within hospitals that open PAs with, you know, open arms, and they're so glad that they're there because they haven't got the time, the resources, or the knowledge to assist us themselves. So what are we trying to achieve in this campaign? We would like to see better outcomes, quicker recovery, less time in hospital. We'd like to see the personalised care needs of met. We'd like to obviously avoid secondary issues such as pressure sores, to reduce the anxiety and see a more person-centred approach to hospital admissions. So I don't really like this phrase very much, but it sums it up well. We want to sort of win the hearts and minds of the people that are dealing with us on the front line as well. So that could be consultants, ward managers, nursing staff, A&E departments. It might not be through sort of not wanting to understand. It might be that they've never considered the issue before, or maybe a shift of attitude. But so it's not just a case of changing things at policy level.
£12 an hour is much too low. We need this to be supported by the groups, and that was kind of the overriding thing to question one.
There seems to be variations across the region, whereas compared to my experience, it appears that in in local authority or council areas that you are paid a gross amount, but they demand that you do not pay more than the minimum wage per hour, which sometimes I took it left you with a surplus that you couldn't use. And that was brought up by some of the organisations that support people with to maximise their budget, that they actually are hamstringed by this requirement.
There needs to be more employee training, not necessarily focusing on the employees and the PAs, but there needs to be more employer training, because the employer is feeling that they're a target for employment tribunal.
Pretty much everything else that's been said, consistency required, but more than anything, probably, if I was to pick one thing out of all of it that's different, is that there should be a guide, a dummies guide or a signposting guide for people who are going to employ carers, so that they know how to go about it and what the regulations would be.
Now, I think that's quite a good idea, because sometimes we all our PAs have different hours, don't they? So sometimes employing a PA is not attractive because the hours are not enough. Now, if maybe we could look at, in our steering group, as in different areas, a sharing group where we may have a PA that's only got 10 hours, and then another employer has got another 15 hours, they could work together and give that PA and actually make the job more attractive. Is that it's not enough hours for a PA. That's why, the local authority, I've got 6 girls, and the local authority has only given me extra hours for extra 15 hours for another PA. Nobody's going to fill that spot, because you can't even come off universal credit on 15 hours. You have to be working 16.
That's something that we will be looking at is with the different hats on. There's work going on to talk about different types of PAs, self-employed PAs, and there's some work going on with CQC and other bodies and HMRC around kind of the difference and trying to kind of demystify some of that, because we are probably straying into that territory. And I think what I'd love to do is to involve this group with some of that work, so we get that combined kind of view from people who use PAs and also people who are involved in advising around it. So really exciting stuff. I'd love to kind of share that work across the two worlds. Actually, I think would be really, really positive thing to do.
And I figure that what the amount that I pay is reasonable for what I ask them to do. But I also know that there are self-employed PAs who are asking twice what I pay.
It might be better to have like regional groups, because it's so different, as we discussed in our group, between Essex and a different county, that the pay structure is completely different. Some are on £9.50 and some are on £14-17 an hour. So I think regional would have to be, because it's all pay related to the area you live in, isn't it?
I think of course we want to value our workers, and we want them to be paid a fair wage and an attractive wage that means that the work that they do is valued, because it's very valuable to us. But actually we are all different, and our jobs are all different, and I think it would be helpful if we could recognize that actually there are different levels of work that different PAs do for us.
That to me is the point of having the control as an employer to say, my needs are whatever, that rate deserves, within reason, of course, because I could be like, I deserve to pay £100 an hour, whatever, and obviously it's not going to happen, but that's where common sense comes in. And also there's other things like people in rural areas really struggle to recruit, so being able to say, this is the issue in my area. So it is definitely complex, and it's not there's no one to wave and say, okay, now everyone gets £20 an hour, everything's sorted. That definitely isn't the case, but it's really interesting points. But just thank you so much for coming today. I hope you all enjoyed it. I do understand this was our first one, so I'm sure everything didn't run as smoothly as it could have done, but we will learn and get better.